Hello, good day. This is Jude Obidiogu from National Root Crop Research Institute in Umudike. Today, I would like to share some of my experiences with on-farm yam variety validation trials in Nigeria. Of course, I'm making this presentation on behalf of my colleagues, Asrat and Happiness Celebe. Well, as a breeding team, what do we want? What's our aim for our on-farm trials? We're looking at using this as a platform to increase available productive and preferred varieties that is approved and eligible for multiplication and marketing in the country. And as well to increase the choice of improved yam varieties, offering more opportunities for the end users and those having direct leverage on food security. Now, of course, this is an on-farm trial and it's an advanced stage of evaluation. These materials have actually undergone the clonal evaluation stage and advanced performance trials to national performance trials. Selections have actually been made in respect to so many threats. But then it's time for us to interact with the farmers under the special platform where farmers actually manage these trials. So we had 5 candidate clones of the Elata, and of course a national check and a local check, which has to be peculiar to the farmer. Same trend with Dascuria rotundata, the white yam. We had 5 candidate clones, as well as standard check of a variety and 265 and peculiar local varieties with farmers. So in all, we had 2 independent trials, one for Alata and one for Rotundata. So now, how did we manage the trials around the country? We had 17 farmers, fields, both for Alata and Rotundata, and they were all in different locations in the country, from Abakaliki to up to Alhaji. But most importantly, we knew we had to cover diverse agroecology of yam growing areas. So that we made sure we did. And very important, and I need to stress this point, that we must get farmers, and we had to get farmers that are willing and have the ability to host these trials. Now, what you have on the screen is kind of a Nigerian map. The red spots are the locations we had the on-farm trials. As you can see, we try to be representative of yam growing areas, the major yam growing areas in the country. So we had to cover all the diversity, there was some kind of ecological balance, so to say. And it's very critical to mention and important to mention that within this evaluation, the technical subcommittee of crop variety release committee had to visit the trials as much as they could go around, and they interacted with the farmers, got their feedbacks from farmers. They had visits at advanced vegetative stages, and part of the impression definitely influences the decision to whether release the variety or not. But then at this stage, it's purely between the committee members and the farmers. So we as breeders don't interact with them, but we take them to the field as well. So what did we do? Like I mentioned earlier, we had 5 candidate clones with 2 checks each, and each of these candidates had 10 plants stand in each farmer's field. We use a uniform set size of 150 grams. The farmers were used as replicates within these communities. Of course, it being a farmer's managed trial, it's at the discretion of the farmer to use mount or reach based on his conforming condition. The assessment were actually done by panelists with some level of experience on yam food quality. Of course, we did the assessment for pounded and boiled yam. And of course, we made sure there was some kind of gender balance. So we had tail male and tail female in the panel. So now what did we really do? We used the tuber size of 500 grams for the was peeled. That was what we used, peeled a centralized protocol that we use in, and the, the peeled we are prepared into 4 grams cube and cooked. 125 mils of water was used for the cooking for 20 minutes. Of course, for the pounded yam, we used the pounding machine, and we did this pounding for like 6 minutes. And as much as possible, we hid the identity of those candidates, and we use unique identification code for each of them. And for the panelists, we consider traits and attributes like appearance, texture, aroma, color, text, mealiness, elasticity, molding, and general acceptability. And for the elasticity and molding, that was actually peculiar for pounded yam. Now, for these traits that were mentioned, these were the scales that were used for them. Appearance, color, aroma, text had to range from dislike extremely to like extremely on a scale of 1 to 5. White texture had strong, intermediate, and soft. Mealiness had surges, slightly mealy and mealy. And for moldability, extremes of not mold well and easy to mold. And elasticity, not elastic and easy to mold as 2 extremes. Of course, general quality was like on a 5-point scale as well. And that was actually the scale that they used for the scoring. Now, these are some of the pictorials of interactions with farmers in the field up to the point of PVS. This was kind of interaction, trying to put them through in the process of post-harvest people. When the materials we actually harvested, we took the post-harvest data from the field in terms of yield, then brought it back to the farmers, some farming communities, or probably some farmers' homes who were generous enough to allow us to use some of their facilities for the scaling and scoring. And of course, when you start this process, it's a day's exercise. So each farmer took a whole day. Each farmer took a whole day. So these are part of the pictorials. And on these pictures, we still had some level of assessment and proximate based on farmers' condition. So where we looked at protein, starch, carbohydrate, and fluid, as well as tons, the yield in terms of tons per hectare. And if you look at the differentials in terms of yield, when you put it in the context of when you look at it in comparison with the local checks, you will agree with me there was significant difference in terms of yield when compared to the local checks. So, and even the national check, the candidate 432, which we are pushing, which were finally released, which we pushed as candidates, beat them. So the same for the Rotundata. 498 and 67 were top candidates. They were actually better in terms of tons, in terms of yield, and relatively speaking, they did quite well in some other parameters. Now, for the results on what you're seeing on the screen, it's because of when we consider all the attributes that were used to make this assessment, we had to subject them to ordinary logistic analysis, whereby we try to regress some of these traits across the cultivars and clones, and we had to specifically look at the candidate performance in relation to the local checks and the national check. And the positive values above the horizontal line signifies a higher positive value for most of those traits. And you can see that 432 was much more preferred when you consider it to the local and some other clones. So it was actually above a threshold of the local materials that were like used like reference. And even the 194, which is used at the national shake, didn't do as much better than the 432. So that's it. And in the next slide, we looked at, this is actually for D-routine data. If we look at it, 048 and 067 had positive likelihood values, and it's true that the 2665, which is actually in the market already, seem to have done better, but these materials are actually going down in terms of yield. And I think this is a good strategy for their replacement because of some other stable attributes and conferred on 048 and 067. And this is actually for Boyd Riam. And what you see on the screen is for pounded, where we looked at so many of the attributes. It's a bit of a noisy, but then if you look at most of the trends and the materials, you find out that the candidates we're pushing seem to have relatively done better in most of the parameters in question, with the positive values above the local checks and the national check. Now, based on some of these attributes and the affirmation and even historic attributes, the candidates for D-Alata was nominated for variety release, and based on remarkable yield potential and adaptation to southern savanna ecology, it had high potential with high dry matter. Combined high potential with high dry matter and tolerance to disease, it possessed creamy white tuber flesh color with no tuber oxidation. And it possesses exceptional food quality that could be likened to water yam, and it had relative high protein level. So that was actually the unique factor for its consideration. And for routine data, the 6.7 and 4.8 had adaptation to diverse agroecology, which is key, and with some other acceptable food qualities inherent in them. So now, based on that, this general kind of specific descriptor of the materials that were actually released for. This is actually for the routine data, and okay, this is actually for the D-Alata, and for this is a pictorial for the D-Alata, the candidate that was finally made it, the 432. These are the leaves and vegetative and some of the tubers with the cylindrical shape. And for the D-routine data, you can see that's 067. These are specific descriptor with dry matter of 30.8, starch shade of 75, and carbohydrate of 82. And this is actually the pictorials for these candidates. So for 048 specific descriptor, the second D-routine data candidate that was released, it had a dry matter of almost 31, starch yield of around 78, and the flour yield of around 35%, which is remarkable. And actually, these candidates had to pass through the National Varietal Release Committee and was conferred varietal status on the 16th day of December, on the 15th day of December 2020. And that's actually the picture of the second candidate of TDR 048. Yeah, so on that note, I wish to thank you all for listening, and my colleagues, and acknowledge RTBfoods, African Young Project, IGA, and the National Red Cross, and some of the key personnel that contributed to some of our success. Yeah, thank you for listening.